The assembly hall fell silent as the massive doors opened. Captain Hyun-Soo Kim stood among the other delegates, watching as the newcomers entered. They were tall, nearly 8 feet high, with dark purple skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their eyes glowed with a cold blue light, and their movements carried an air of complete confidence. Hyun-Soo had seen many alien species during his 15 years exploring the galaxy. He had walked among the peaceful Torvan traders, shared meals with the artistic Plenari, and negotiated mining rights with the methodical Krell. But these newcomers were different. Everything about them screamed danger. Dr. Yuna Park leaned closer to him. "The Velrothi Empire," she whispered. "I read about them in the old databanks. They come from a distant galaxy." The lead Velrothi stepped forward to the center platform. His armor was covered in strange symbols that seemed to move across the metal surface. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the hall without any need for amplification. "I am Commander Thexral of the Velrothi Empire. We have crossed the void between galaxies to bring order to this chaotic sector of space." He paused, looking around at all the assembled species with obvious disgust. "Your primitive systems offend us. Your weak governments disgust us. Your very existence is an insult to proper civilization." Ambassador Hana Choi rose from her seat. She was Earth's representative to the Galactic Assembly, a woman known for her diplomatic skill and calm demeanor. "Welcome to our galaxy, Commander. We hope to establish peaceful relations with your people." Thexral laughed. It was a harsh, cruel sound. "Peaceful? There is no peace. There is only power and submission." He raised one hand, and a holographic display appeared in the air above him. It showed hundreds of worlds, all marked with Velrothi symbols. "We have conquered 200 worlds in our home galaxy. Your assembly controls fewer than 80. The other alien delegates shifted nervously in their seats. Hyun-Soo could see fear in their eyes. The Krell ambassador's tentacles were trembling. The Torvan representative had already begun backing toward the exit. "We offer you a choice," Thexral continued. "Submit to Velrothi rule, and you will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. Your worlds will provide resources for our expansion. Your people will work for our glory. In exchange, we will not destroy you. And if we refuse?" asked Commander Jin-Ho Lee. He was a military strategist who had come with the human delegation. His voice was steady, showing no fear. Thexral smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Then we will demonstrate why refusal is foolish." He touched a control on his wrist, and the holographic display changed. It now showed a moon orbiting a gas giant. "This moon in your Helion system is uninhabited, yes?" Ambassador Hana nodded slowly. "Yes, but..." She never finished her sentence. The display showed 3 Velrothi ships appearing near the moon. There was a flash of brilliant white light, and then the moon was simply gone. Not destroyed in an explosion, but erased as if it had never existed. The gas giant's orbit wobbled slightly from the sudden loss of mass. Silence filled the hall. It was the kind of silence that comes from pure terror. Hyun-Soo felt his stomach twist. That moon had been the size of Earth's own moon. The weapons needed to simply delete it from existence were beyond anything humanity possessed. "You have 30 days to decide," Thexral announced. "Submit or die. There is no third option." He turned and walked out, his warriors following behind him. The massive doors closed with a sound like thunder. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the Torvan ambassador stood up. "We submit," he said quietly. "My people will not die for pride." One by one, the other species announced their surrender. The Krell submitted. The Planary submitted. The insectoid Vrek submitted without even discussing it with their homeworld. Within an hour, 11 species had bent their knees to the Velrothi Empire. Only the human delegation remained silent. Ambassador Hana finally stood. Her face was pale, but her voice was firm. "I need to consult with Earth before making such a decision. This is not something one person can decide for all humanity." Thexral's hologram appeared again. He must have been monitoring the hall remotely. "You have 30 days, human. But let me be clear. 11 species have shown wisdom. They will live, though, as our servants. Your delay suggests foolishness. I hope for your sake that you find wisdom before time runs out." The hologram vanished. The human delegation left the hall together, not speaking until they reached their ship. Only then did Ambassador Hana let her composure crack slightly. She sat down heavily in the command chair. "They'll destroy us," Dr. Yuna said quietly. "Did you see what they did to that moon? Our weapons can't do that. Our shields can't stop that. So what do you suggest? Hyunsu asked. That we surrender? That we give up everything we've built and become slaves? Yuna shook her head. I'm just stating facts. We're outmatched. Commander Jin-Ho had been quiet, but now he spoke. Every species in there surrendered immediately. None of them even tried to negotiate or ask questions. They just gave up. Because they're smart, Yuna replied. They want to survive. Or because they've never had to fight for their freedom, Jin-Ho countered. Has the Torvan species ever fought a war? Have the Krell? These species have lived in peace for thousands of years. They don't understand what humans learned long ago. What's that? Hana asked. Jin-Ho looked at each of them in turn. That some things are worth dying for. That freedom isn't free. That you cannot compromise with a bully. He pulled up data on his tablet. I've been studying human history during the flight here. Do you know how many times humanity was told we couldn't win? How many times we were told to surrender? Hyunsu nodded slowly. And we never did. Never, Jin-Ho confirmed. We fought against impossible odds again and again. Sometimes we lost battles, but we never stopped fighting. The Velrathi think they can break us with one demonstration of power. They don't understand that breaking humans makes them more dangerous, not less. Ambassador Hana was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I'll send our response to Earth, but I think I already know what the answer will be. She looked at the display showing the space where the moon had been. Humanity has never bowed to tyrants. We're not going to start now. The ship turned toward Earth, carrying with it a message that would change the galaxy forever. In 30 days, the Velrathi would learn something important about humanity. They would learn that humans were very good at doing impossible things. They would learn that fear was not enough to break the human spirit. They would learn, but the lesson would cost them everything. The 30 days passed too quickly. Earth's answer had been simple and direct. They would not surrender. Every nation, every colony, every human settlement had voted the same way. Not one voice called for submission. The decision was unanimous in a way that human decisions rarely were. Admiral Daewon Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Defiance, watching the countdown on his display. 3 minutes until the deadline expired. His fleet was spread across 5 systems, protecting the outer colonies as best they could. It would not be enough. He knew that. Everyone knew that. Sir, we're detecting Velrathi ships, reported the sensor officer. 30 vessels entering the new Sol system. Daewon had known this was coming, but hearing it still made his chest tight. New Sol was home to 2 million people. It was a farming colony, established only 50 years ago. The people there grew food for a dozen other settlements. They had no military defenses beyond a few patrol ships. Send the evacuation signal, he ordered. All civilian ships are to begin emergency departure procedures. But there was no time. The Velrathi ships moved with terrifying speed. On the display, Daewon watched as white beams of light reached out from the alien vessels toward the colony below. Where the beams touched, matter simply ceased to exist. Buildings, roads, forests, mountains, all of it vanished as if erased by an invisible hand. Second attack detected, the sensor officer said, his voice shaking. Horizon Station. Enemy force of 20 ships. Third attack, Terra Nova, 25 ships, 3 simultaneous strikes. The Velrathi were not wasting time with warnings or demonstrations. They were showing humanity the price of defiance. Captain Hyunsu Kim was at Horizon Station when the attack began. His ship, the Indomitable Spirit, was in dock for repairs when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the bridge, knowing he would not make it in time but running anyway. The station shuddered as the first weapon hit. Through the windows, Hyunsu could see the outer ring simply disappear. 5,000 people lived in that ring. Now there was nothing but empty space where it had been. Get everyone to the evacuation pods, he shouted into the ship-wide communication system. Now move! The crew responded with trained efficiency, but there were so many civilians on the station. Families, children, elderly people who had retired to the peaceful station. They clogged the corridors, panic making them clumsy and slow. Another impact. The station's main hub vanished. The artificial gravity failed, and people began floating in the sudden zero gravity. Hyunsu grabbed a young girl who was floating past, crying for her mother. He pulled her toward an escape pod, pushing through the crowd. Lieutenant Sumi Kang was leading her fighter squadron toward Terra Nova when she saw the colony below begin to die. Her orders were to engage the enemy and buy time for evacuation ships to escape. It was a suicide mission and everyone in her squadron knew it. Phoenix Squadron on me, she called over the radio. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her heart. We're not going to win this fight, but we're going to make them pay for every second. Her 12 fighters dove toward the Velrathi fleet. The enemy ships were massive, each one 10 times larger than her entire squadron combined. Their weapons could destroy her fighter with a single shot. But Sumi had studied the sensor data carefully. The Velrathi shields were strong, but they took a moment to recharge between shots. Target their weapon ports during the recharge cycle, she ordered. Hit them fast, then break away. The squadron split into pairs, darting between the massive enemy ships like insects around giants. Sumi's fighter screamed as she pushed it to maximum speed, her targeting computer struggling to keep up with her maneuvers. She fired her missiles directly into a weapon port just as it finished firing, and was rewarded with a small explosion. It was not much. It would not save Terra Nova, but it proved that the Velrathi could be hurt. 2 of her pilots died in the first pass, 4 more on the second, but they had destroyed 3 weapon systems and damaged 2 enemy ships badly enough that they withdrew from the battle. Back on Horizon Station, Hyunsu had managed to get 40 evacuation pods away before the station's power core was hit. The explosion that followed destroyed what remained of the station and his ship along with it. But those 40 pods carried 15,000 people. 15,000 lives saved from certain death. He floated in space, his emergency suit keeping him alive but not for long. Around him floated debris and bodies. So many bodies. He had failed to save them all. Then a light appeared. A small transport ship, damaged and limping, came alongside him. The airlock opened and hands pulled him inside. The pilot was Dr. Yuna Park, her face streaked with tears but her hands steady on the controls. I got about 200 people in here, she said. The ship is designed for 50. We're not going to make it far, but we're not dead yet. Head for the outer system, Yunsu told her. The Velrathi seemed to be focusing on the colonies and stations. They might not chase a single transport. By the end of the first day, the casualties were staggering. New Sol was completely destroyed. Not a single structure remained. 400,000 people dead. Horizon Station was gone. Another 100,000 dead. Terra Nova had been evacuated more successfully but still lost over 50,000 people. The Velrathi had struck with overwhelming force, and humanity had paid the price. But something unexpected happened. When the Velrathi expected humanity to surrender, to beg for mercy, they received a different message instead. Admiral Daewon sent it from the bridge of his flagship, broadcasting it across every channel so that the entire galaxy could hear. To the Velrathi Empire. You have killed our people. You have destroyed our homes. You think this will break us. You are wrong. Every human who died today died free. We will mourn them. We will remember them. And we will make you regret every single death. This is not a surrender. This is a promise. We are coming for you. Commander Thexeril heard the message aboard his flagship. He had expected weeping, begging, and surrender. Instead, he heard defiance. It confused him. No species had ever responded this way. He had destroyed 3 colonies with ease. He had killed hundreds of thousands. Any rational species would surrender now. Increase the attacks, he ordered. Destroy 5 more colonies. Show them that defiance only brings more death. But Dr. Tae-hyun Song, working in a secret research facility deep in Earth's moon, had been studying the recordings of the Velrathi weapons. He was a quiet man who had spent 40 years developing new technologies for humanity. Now he had a new purpose. Their dissolution beams work by disrupting atomic bonds, he explained to his team. It's elegant, efficient, and terrifying. But it has a weakness. The beam needs a stable quantum field to work. If we can disrupt that field, the weapon fails. How long to develop a countermeasure? Asked Colonel Minho Bayek, who commanded the Special Forces team assigned to protect the facility. Months. Maybe a year, Taehyun admitted. But I can have something that will work in small scale within a few weeks. Not enough to save a colony, but enough to save a ship. Then start with the ships, Minho said. We need to keep our military vessels alive. Admiral Daewon received the news about the new attacks on 5 more colonies. The Velrathi were following through on their threat. But this time, humanity was not caught unprepared. Evacuation had already begun. The colonies would be lost, but fewer people would die. And while the Velrathi destroyed empty buildings, human ships were moving into position. Small ships, fast ships, ships that could strike and run before the enemy could respond. They did not try to fight the massive Velrathi fleet directly. Instead, they targeted supply ships, communication relays, and isolated patrol vessels. The war had begun, and humanity was fighting it the only way they knew how. Not with superior technology or overwhelming force, but with determination, sacrifice, and a refusal to give up. The Velrathi had expected an easy victory. What they got instead was the beginning of a nightmare that would not end until one side was completely broken. 6 months into the war, Commander Thexral stood before his tactical display and tried to understand how everything had gone wrong. His empire had destroyed 15 human colonies. They had killed over 1 million humans. By every logical measure, humanity should have surrendered months ago. Instead, the humans fought harder. "Report," he demanded from his second-in-command. "We lost 3 more supply convoys this week," the officer reported nervously. "The humans are using small attack craft that appear on our sensors for only seconds before vanishing. We cannot track them. And the patrol fleet we sent to the outer rim? Still missing, Commander. No distress signal, no debris. They simply disappeared." Thexrel's jaw tightened. An entire patrol fleet, 12 ships, gone without a trace. It made no sense. The humans did not have weapons powerful enough to destroy 12 ships without leaving evidence. So where were they? The answer was in a system 3 jumps away, where Captain Yoon Young Shin smiled from the bridge of her stealth ship. She was an intelligence officer, trained in electronic warfare and deception. For the past month, she had been hacking into Velrathi communication networks. "Send the false coordinates," she ordered her crew. "Make it look like the patrol fleet is reporting success in the far sector." The Velrathi would receive reports from their missing ships for another week before they realized the messages were fake. By then, Yoon Young would have led 3 more patrols into carefully prepared ambushes. The ships themselves were being dismantled by human engineers, their technology studied and copied. Engineer Ji-Woo Huang was leading that effort on a hidden station orbiting a dead planet. He walked among the pieces of Velrathi ships, his team working day and night to understand the alien technology. "Their shields are impressive," he said to his assistant, "but they're designed to stop energy weapons. Physical projectiles pass through with minimal resistance. So we go back to bullets?" the assistant asked, confused. Ji-Woo grinned. "Not bullets, missiles, lots of missiles. Fast ones that the shields can't stop." He pulled up a design on his tablet. "I call them needle missiles. Small, cheap, and we can make thousands of them." While engineers worked on new weapons, General Young Sik Cho was fighting a different kind of war. The Velrathi had occupied Ares Prime, a human colony world with a population of 3 million. Most civilians had evacuated, but Young Sik had stayed behind with 50,000 volunteers. They were not soldiers, not really. They were farmers, teachers, miners, and shopkeepers who had chosen to fight rather than run. Young Sik had trained them in the only kind of warfare that made sense against a superior enemy. Urban warfare, guerrilla tactics, hit and run. The Velrathi commander on Ares Prime had 6,000 troops, advanced weapons, and air support. He should have controlled the planet easily. Instead, his troops were dying every day from traps, ambushes, and attacks that came from nowhere. "They hide among the buildings," he reported to Thexral in frustration. "We destroy a building and they appear in another. We hunt them in the streets and they vanish into tunnels. They use our own supply drops against us, stealing weapons and equipment." Young Sik watched from a hidden position as Velrathi troops moved through the ruined city. His radio crackled with reports from his scattered teams. "Team 3 in position. Target the command vehicle. Team 7 ready. We have eyes on their supply depot. Team 12 reporting. Enemy patrol entering the Western District." Young Sik waited until all teams were in position. Then he gave a simple order. "Execute." Across the city, explosions bloomed. The Velrathi command vehicle disappeared in a ball of fire. The supply depot went up in a massive explosion that could be seen from orbit. The patrol in the Western District walked into a prepared kill zone and was cut down in seconds. Before the Velrathi could respond, Young Sik's teams had vanished back into the ruins. They moved through tunnels that the civilians had spent weeks preparing, emerging miles away from the attack sites. By the time Velrathi reinforcements arrived, there was nothing to shoot at. High above the planet, Lieutenant Sumi Kang led what remained of her fighter squadron in another impossible mission. Phoenix Squadron had started with 12 pilots. Now it had 5. But those 5 had become legends among human forces. They had destroyed 20 enemy ships and damaged dozens more. Today's mission was to destroy a Velrothi communication array. It was protected by 6 warships and multiple defensive platforms. A sane commander would have called it impossible. Sumi called it Tuesday. Remember the pattern, she told her pilots. Fast approach, split formation, target the power nodes, then run like hell. Her fighters dove toward the array at speeds that made their ships scream in protest. The Velrothi opened fire and space lit up with energy weapons. Sumi twisted her fighter through the defensive fire, relying on reflexes and instinct more than her instruments. One of her pilots, Hansol, took a direct hit. His fighter exploded in a brief flash of light. Sumi felt anger surge through her, cold and focused. She armed her missiles and fired at the array's main power node. The missiles struck home. The array went dark. Communication across the sector was disrupted. It would take the Velrothi days to restore it. Days when their coordination would be broken, their orders delayed, their forces vulnerable. Phoenix Squadron, break and scatter, Sumi ordered. The 4 remaining fighters split in different directions, making themselves harder to track. They would regroup at a hidden base 3 systems away. Back on Earth, Dr. Tae Hyun-song had made progress on his shield research. He could not stop the dissolution beams entirely, not yet, but he had developed a warning system that could detect when a beam was about to fire, giving ships precious seconds to dodge. It's not much, he admitted to Admiral Daewon during a secure video call, but it's something. Something is more than we had yesterday, Daewon replied. He looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. The war was grinding people down, wearing away their strength. But not their will. Never their will. How long until you can put it on all our ships? 2 months for the military vessels. Civilian ships will take longer. Admiral Daewon nodded. 2 months. They just had to survive 2 more months. He looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human and Velrothi forces. The enemy had numerical superiority, better weapons, stronger shields. But they also had a growing problem. They were running out of supplies. Captain Hyun-soo had been targeting Velrothi supply lines for months. His ship, rebuilt and renamed the Soul's Fury, specialized in ambushing cargo vessels. He had a simple rule: never fight fair. Always attack when the enemy is vulnerable. Always run before they can respond. He watched now as a Velrothi supply convoy approached through a narrow asteroid field. It was the perfect ambush site. His ship was powered down, hidden among the rocks, waiting. 3 cargo ships, 2 escorts, his sensor officer reported quietly. Wait for it, Hyun-soo said. Let them get deep into the field. The convoy moved deeper into the asteroids, the massive ships navigating slowly through the dangerous terrain. When they were fully committed, Hyun-soo gave the order. All ships, attack now. 5 human ships appeared from among the asteroids, their weapons already firing. The Velrothi escorts tried to respond, but they were designed for open space combat, not fighting in an asteroid field. Within minutes, both escorts were crippled. The cargo ships, defenseless, tried to run. Hyun-soo let them go. He did not care about destroying cargo ships. He cared about making the Velrothi spend resources on more escorts, more protection, more ships pulled away from offensive operations to guard supply lines. It was working. Across the sector, the Velrothi were pulling back from offensive operations to protect their logistics. Their advance had stopped. They still held 15 human colonies, but they had not captured any new ones in 3 months. Commander Thexeral saw the reports and felt something he had never felt before. Doubt. He had destroyed more human colonies than he could count. He had killed millions. His forces had won every major battle. But somehow he was losing the war. The humans would not surrender. They would not negotiate. They just kept fighting, kept attacking, kept making his victories feel hollow and meaningless. Every supply ship he lost meant less fuel for his fleet. Every patrol that went missing meant more ships devoted to searching instead of attacking. Every day the war continued meant more resources drained from his empire. And then there were the other species. The ones who had surrendered immediately. Thexeral had reports that some of them were secretly helping humanity. Nothing obvious, nothing he could prove. But intelligence was leaking. Supply caches were being discovered and destroyed. Ambushes were too well planned, as if the humans knew exactly where his forces would be. The 11 species who had bent their knees watched humanity fight. They saw a species that refused to break, that fought with creativity and determination against impossible odds, and slowly, quietly, they began to hope. If humanity could resist the Velrathi, maybe they could too. Someday. 1 year into the war, Dr. Hee Sun-an stood before Admiral Daewon and President Quan Jin Lim with a nervous smile on her face. She had not slept properly in months. Her hair was gray where it had been black, and her hands trembled slightly from exhaustion, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "It works," she said simply. "The equalizer works." Admiral Daewon leaned forward in his chair. "Explain." High Sun pulled up a holographic display showing waves of energy. The Velrathi shields operate on a quantum frequency that makes them nearly impenetrable to energy weapons. We could not match that technology, so instead, we found a way to cancel it. She manipulated the display, showing two waves colliding and flattening each other. The equalizer generates a counter frequency. When it hits Velrathi shields, the shields simply stop working. "For how long?" President Quan Jin asked. 30 seconds. But 30 seconds is enough. Hee-sun looked at both men seriously. "This changes everything. With the equalizer, our weapons can hurt them. With the warning system Dr. Tae-hyun developed, we can avoid their weapons. For the first time since this war started, we can fight them on equal terms." "Equal terms," Daewon repeated slowly. "After a year of running and hiding, we can finally stand and fight." "We can," Hee-sun confirmed. "But we only have enough equalizers for 800 ships. If we're going to use this advantage, we need to use it decisively." The decision was made quickly. Humanity would gather every ship, every weapon, every resource for one massive battle. They would stake everything on a single engagement. If they won, the war would turn in their favor. If they lost, humanity would be finished. Commander Sung-woo Nam was given command of the operation. He was younger than many expected for such responsibility, only 35 years old. But he had proven himself in a dozen smaller engagements, and he had a gift for tactical thinking that others recognized. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unconquered, and studied the tactical display. 800 human ships gathered in the Arcturus system. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Against them would come the Velrathi Third Armada, 400 ships of superior technology and firepower. "All ships report ready," his communications officer announced. Sung-woo nodded. "Then we wait. Let them come to us." The Velrathi arrived 3 hours later, confident and aggressive. To them, this looked like desperation. The humans had gathered their forces for one last stand, making it easy to destroy them all at once. Commander Thexerol had come personally to witness humanity's final defeat. 400 ships against 800 human vessels, Thexerol said to his officers. "It hardly seems fair, but we will show no mercy. Today we break the human spirit once and for all." The two fleets faced each other across the empty space. For a long moment no one moved. Then Sung-woo gave the order that would change the war. "Activate the equalizers. All ships, full attack." 800 human ships surged forward as one, and the space between the fleets filled with weapon fire. The Velrathi opened fire with their powerful energy weapons, expecting to tear through the human formation easily. Then their shields failed. For 30 seconds, the Velrathi were completely vulnerable. In those 30 seconds, the concentrated fire of 800 human ships tore into them with devastating effect. 50 Velrathi ships exploded before their commanders even understood what was happening. "Shields are not responding," a Velrathi officer shouted in panic. "Some kind of jamming field." "Evasive maneuvers," Thexerol ordered. "Return fire." But the human ships were already scattering, breaking into smaller groups that the Velrathi found hard to target. They had learned from a year of desperate fighting. They knew how to move, how to dodge, how to fight against a superior enemy. And now, for the first time, they had weapons that could actually hurt their opponents. Lieutenant Sumi Kang led Phoenix Squadron straight into the heart of the Velrathi formation. Her mission was to take out their command ship, the vessel where Thexerol himself commanded the battle. It was a suicide mission and everyone knew it. But if they could kill the Velrathi commander, it might break their coordination. "Phoenix Squadron, follow my lead," she called over the radio. "We're going for the big one." Her 5 fighters dove through a storm of weapons fire. One of her pilots, Jae-hyun, took a hit and spiraled away, his fighter crippled but still flying. 4 fighters left, racing toward a ship that could destroy all of them with a single shot. The equalizer activated again. 30 seconds of vulnerability. Sumi fired everything she had at the command ship's bridge. Her missiles streaked across the space, followed by laser fire and every weapon her fighter could carry. The command ship's shields flickered back online just as her weapons hit. Most of the damage was absorbed, but not all. The bridge took damage and, more importantly, Thexerol was injured. Not killed, but hurt badly enough that he had to be taken to the medical bay. Without their commander, the Velrathi formation began to falter. Their second-in-command tried to restore order, but he was used to following orders, not giving them. The tight coordination that had made the Velrathi so dangerous began to break down. Captain Hyun-soo saw the opportunity and took it. "All ships, press the attack! Don't give them time to regroup." The human fleet surged forward again, the equalizers cycling through their charges. Each ship could use the device 3 times before it needed to recharge. They used those charges well, targeting the largest Velrathi ships first, the ones that posed the greatest threat. Commander Yoon-young was not in a fighter. She was aboard a stealth ship behind Velrathi lines, jamming their communications and feeding false orders into their network. The chaos she created was just as effective as weapons fire. Velrathi ships found themselves receiving contradictory orders, turning away from battles they could have won, leaving gaps in their formation that human ships exploited. The battle raged for 6 hours. In that time, the Velrathi Third Armada was systematically destroyed. Of their 400 ships, only 90 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. On the human side, losses were heavy. 200 ships destroyed, many more damaged. But they had won. They had actually won. News of the victory spread across human space within hours. In the occupied territories, resistance fighters heard the news and redoubled their efforts. On Earth, people wept with joy and relief. For the first time in a year, they had real hope. But the most important reaction came from the Galactic Assembly. The 11 species who had surrendered to the Velrathi watched the battle recordings in disbelief. The inferior humans had defeated a Velrathi armada. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. The Torvan ambassador sent a secret message to Ambassador Hana Choi. It was brief and carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. "We have resources you might find useful. Tell us how we can help." The plenary followed, then the Krell. Within days, all 11 species were secretly funneling supplies, intelligence, and support to humanity. They could not fight openly, not yet. But they could help in small ways, ways that made a difference. On Ares Prime, General Young-sik received a supply drop that he had not requested. Inside were weapons, ammunition, and medical supplies. There was no note, no identification, but the supplies had come through Krell shipping lanes. The message was clear. The Krell were no longer neutral. President Kwon Jin Lim stood before the cameras to address not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The speech was broadcast on every channel, translated into every language. 1 year ago, the Velrathi demanded our surrender. They promised us slavery or death. We chose neither. We chose to fight. They destroyed our colonies. They killed our people. They thought they could break us with fear and violence. But they forgot something important. They forgot that humans have never surrendered to tyrants. Not once in our long history have we bowed to those who would enslave us. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Today we proved that the Velrathi can be beaten. Their ships burn like any other. Their soldiers die like any other. They are not invincible. They are not unstoppable. They are bullies, and like all bullies, they fall when someone stands up to them. To the Velrathi Empire, I say this. You thought you would make an example of us. Instead, we will make an example of you. We will fight you until you leave our space. We will fight you until you beg for peace. And when you do, we will remember every human who died, every colony you destroyed, every crime you committed. Justice is coming. And to the other species of this galaxy who bent their knees, I say, stand up, fight. You are not alone. Together we can end this tyranny. Together we can build a galaxy where no species lives in fear of another. Commander Thexerol watched the speech from his medical bed, his body wrapped in regeneration fields. For the first time since he had arrived in this galaxy, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. The humans had found a way to hurt his people. They had won a major battle. And worst of all, they had inspired others to resist. The war was far from over. But the tide had turned. 2 years after the war began, humanity was ready to end it. The victory at Arcturus had changed everything. The secret support from other species had grown into open alliance. The Krell provided raw materials. The Torvan offered their extensive merchant fleet for logistics. The Planari shared their advanced sensor technology. Even species from the Velrothi home galaxy had begun to rebel, inspired by humanity's example. Admiral Day-Wan stood in the war room surrounded by holographic displays showing every human fleet position. Beside him were commanders from a dozen alien species, all united against the Velrothi Empire. It was a sight he had never imagined he would see. Operation Final Dawn begins in 6 hours, he announced. Every Velrothi position will be hit simultaneously. No warning, no mercy, no retreat. We end this today. Commander Sung Woo would lead the main fleet toward the Velrothi homeworld of Velroth Prime. It was the heart of the Empire, protected by hundreds of ships and orbital defense platforms. Taking it would require everything humanity had learned in 2 years of desperate warfare. Colonel Minho Beck and his Special Forces teams had a different mission. They would strike at ground installations across 20 occupied worlds, destroying supply depots, command centers, and communication arrays. It was dangerous work that would cost many lives, but it would cripple the Velrothi ability to coordinate their defense. Captain Hyun-Soo Kim commanded a task force of fast attack ships. His mission was to destroy the Velrothi shipyards orbiting their secondary world. Those yards produced the weapons that had killed so many humans. Hyun-Soo had personal reasons to want them gone. Lieutenant Sumi Kang had been promoted to captain after the Battle of Arcturus. Now she led an entire wing of fighters, not just Phoenix Squadron. Her mission was perhaps the most dangerous of all. She would lead a strike against the Velrothi flagship, the massive vessel where Commander Thexerel had returned to command after his injuries healed. On Ares Prime, General Youngsik prepared his resistance fighters for their final offensive. For 2 years they had fought in the ruins of their cities, never giving up, never surrendering. Today they would drive the Velrothi from their world once and for all. The operation began exactly on schedule. Across 20 star systems, human and allied forces struck at Velrothi positions. The enemy, weakened by 2 years of grinding warfare and internal rebellion, could not respond effectively to so many simultaneous attacks. Minho led his team through the underground tunnels of a Velrothi command center on occupied Helios 4. They moved in complete silence, their weapons ready, their movements practiced and precise. They had done this type of mission 100 times before, but this one felt different. This one felt final. Charges placed, whispered his demolition expert. Ready to blow on your signal. Minho checked his display. All teams across all 20 worlds were in position. All teams execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. 20 command centers exploded simultaneously. Velrothi forces across the occupied territories suddenly found themselves cut off from their leadership, unable to coordinate or call for reinforcements. It was the beginning of the end. Hyun-Soo's attack on the shipyards was brutal and efficient. His ships came in fast, launched their missiles, and withdrew before the defenses could respond. The shipyards, designed to build vessels, not fight them, had minimal defenses. Within an hour, they were wreckage floating in space. Target destroyed, Hyun-Soo reported, moving to secondary objectives. Sung Woo's main fleet approached Velroth Prime with deliberate slowness. He wanted the Velrothi to see them coming, to have time to gather their forces in one place. Every ship they pulled back to defend their homeworld was a ship not defending somewhere else. The Velrothi Emperor, seeing the massive human fleet approaching, ordered every available ship to Velroth Prime. It was exactly what Sung Woo had hoped for. The Velrothi were concentrating their forces, making themselves predictable. All ships maintain formation, Sung Woo ordered. Let them think we're coming for a direct assault. Captain Sumi Kang's fighter wing was hidden among a nearby asteroid field, waiting for the right moment. She watched as the Velrothi fleet positioned itself between the human fleet and their homeworld, exactly where they were supposed to be. Phoenix Wing, prepare for attack run, she said quietly. We're going straight through their formation to the flagship. Remember, we only need to keep them busy for 10 minutes. Her fighters launched from their hiding spots, streaking toward the Velrothi rear guard. The enemy, focused on the massive human fleet in front of them, did not see the fighters until they were already inside their defensive perimeter. Sumi's targeting computer locked onto the Velrothi flagship. It was enormous, easily 100 times the size of her fighter. But size did not matter when you knew where to aim. She had studied recordings of Velrathi ships for 2 years. She knew every weakness, every vulnerable point. All fighters target the main reactor housing, she ordered. Hit it with everything you have. The fighters dove through defensive fire that turned space into a web of deadly energy. 2 fighters exploded. 3 more were damaged and had to break off. But Sumi and 6 others reached their target. They fired their missiles into the flagship's reactor housing, the one spot where the ship's own shields could not fully protect it. The reactor went critical. The flagship's crew had 30 seconds to evacuate before the entire ship exploded. Most did not make it. Commander Thexrel was on the bridge when the reactor failed. He had time to realize what was happening, to understand that he had been beaten. Then there was only light and heat in the end. With their flagship destroyed and their command structure shattered, the Velrathi fleet broke. Some ships tried to fight on. Most retreated or surrendered. Sungwoo's fleet pursued them relentlessly, offering no quarter to those who had offered none to humanity. On the surface of Velrath Prime, the Velrathi Emperor watched his fleet die. He activated his final weapon, a device that could destroy entire planets. If he could not win, he would at least take Earth with him. He entered the firing sequence, his hand trembling with rage and desperation. Sumi saw the energy signature spike on her sensors. They're charging some kind of weapon, she reported urgently. Massive energy readings from the surface. Phoenix Wing, break off and investigate, Sungwoo ordered. Sumi and her remaining fighters dove toward the planet. They found the weapon installation quickly, a massive structure built into a mountain. It was already charging, power flowing into it from a dozen reactors. We can't destroy it in time, one of her pilots said, panic creeping into his voice. The shields are too strong. Sumi looked at her fuel gauge, her weapons display, and the timer showing how long until the weapon fired. She did the math in her head. There was only one way to stop it. Phoenix Wing, withdraw to safe distance, she ordered. Captain, what are you? That's an order. Get clear now. Her pilots obeyed, their fighters pulling away. Sumi turned her fighter toward the weapon installation and pushed her engines to maximum. She thought about Earth, about her family, about the 2 million humans who had died in this war. She thought about Lieutenant Hansol, who had died at her side a year ago. She thought about all the people who had sacrificed everything so that humanity could remain free. Then she thought nothing at all. Her fighter struck the weapon installation at nearly the speed of light. The impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb. The weapon, the installation, and the mountain it was built into all ceased to exist in a fraction of a second. When the light faded, there was only a crater. The war ended that day. The Velrathi Emperor surrendered unconditionally. His empire, already crumbling from internal rebellions, fell apart completely. The Velrathi forces in occupied territories surrendered or were destroyed. Within a week, every human colony was free again. The peace treaty was harsh. The Velrathi military was completely disbanded. Their territory was reduced to just their home system. They were forbidden from developing certain weapons or leaving their system without permission from the Galactic Council. And they were required to pay reparations for the next 100 years. Some argued that humanity was being too harsh. Ambassador Hana Choi responded simply, "They came to our galaxy planning to enslave or destroy us all. They killed millions. They showed no mercy. We are giving them something they never offered us. We are giving them a chance to live, to rebuild, to perhaps someday rejoin galactic civilization as equals rather than conquerors." The Galactic Assembly was reformed. The 11 species who had surrendered to the Velrathi joined humanity in creating a new charter, one that guaranteed freedom and self-determination for all species. The charter included provisions for mutual defense. If any species ever again tried to conquer or enslave others, all signatories would unite against them. Humanity did not seek to rule the galaxy. They had not fought for empire but for freedom. But they were respected now, feared even, not because of their weapons or their fleets, but because every species knew what humanity had proven. They knew that humans would rather die than submit, would fight impossible odds rather than surrender, and would sacrifice everything to protect their freedom. 50 years after the war ended, Dr. Yuna Park visited the memorial on Earth.